Queen Mojisola began to cry and panicked immediately she heard what her son just said to her. King Adewale felt bad for making his mother cry, so he began to beg her to stop crying and promised her that he was going to let go of what he felt and would take a wife. Very early at dawn the next morning, Queen Mojisola was seen secretly talking to an old woman by a quiet and lonely bush path. The old woman gave her something wrapped in a leaf. Queen Mojisola thanked the old woman and both of them were about to go their separate ways when Chief Owolabi came out from the bush he has been hiding and intercepted them. Once upon a time, in a small village called Boku, there lived a very young and fine-looking king named King Adewale. King Adewale ascended the throne when he was only 11 years old after the death of his father and former king. He was the only child of his father and the sole heir to the throne. So, though he was considered quite so young at that time, and some members of the king's council had considered him too small and fragile, he was still crowned king, as it was the customs and traditions of Boku land for an heir to immediately ascend the throne after the death of the previous king. King Adewale killed the fear and doubts in the hearts of those who were skeptical about his reign at such a young age, as he possessed outstanding wisdom and ruled the kingdom of Boku as if he were a mature man. He made right decisions that made Boku land flourish and prosper. He settled every issues and disputes brought before him with wisdom and gave fair judgments. This made the people of Boku agree and would always say that of a truth he was the true son of his father. Kábíyèsí o, you are indeed as great and knowledgeable as your father. May you live long, the villagers and elders in council would say to him as they paid their respects and would bow before him. But as King Adewale grew and became a young adult, people began to notice that physically he looked nothing like his late father. King Adewale's father was 6 feet and 9 inches tall, broad-chested, muscular and bearded. Everything about him showed absolute masculinity. However, King Adewale was the opposite. King Adewale was just a little above 5 feet. He was 5 feet and 1 inch in height, had just an ordinary chest, and had no single strand of beard. If not for his flat chest and husky voice, he may have passed for a girl, as he also looked much more like his mother than he looked like his late father. King Adewale's mother, whose name is Queen Mojisola, is the Queen Mother. Queen Mojisola loves her son and supported him, offering him wise counsel and advice like she did and supported her late husband. Queen Mojisola is a very fine, petite woman. Even in her middle-aged years, her beauty still radiates. She is also just 5 feet in height, which is almost the same height as her son King Adewale. There is a young man in the village whose name is Ogunjimi. Ogunjimi is about 21 years old, which means that he is 3 years older than King Adewale. Ogunjimi is the nephew of a man called Chief Owolabi. Chief Owolabi is a member of the King's Council. However, Chief Owolabi does not like King Adewale and he secretly opposed his rule. Chief Owolabi greatly kicked against crowning King Adewale when he was little. Yes, he is our late king's only son and heir to the throne, but he is only a child. How can we put a child on the throne and let him rule over us? All I am saying is that let someone from the king's council rule until Adewale is grown and mature to understand the affairs of the throne, Chief Owolabi said to his fellow elders. He said this because he was the late king's right-hand man and the one most eligible to be considered to take up the position of acting village head. And if that happens, he may eventually become the king of the village if something goes wrong with Adewale. So he fought so hard, but the village chief priest and the kingmakers still went ahead to crown King Adewale. And since then, Chief Owolabi has been angry and has been secretly wishing that young King Adewale would fail and make a grave error that would affect the village someday, so that he would be dethroned. But that never happened. And now King Adewale is 18 years old and now an adult. Chief Owolabi has 2 children, a son and a daughter. His daughter is about the same age as King Adewale. Her name was Shalewa. Chief Owolabi, still harboring reservations about the king and with an evil mind and plot, asked his daughter Shalewa to become friends with the king and get him to fall in love with her and marry her. If I can't be king, at least I can become related to royalty and have my offspring rule indirectly in the affairs of the kingdom, he said to himself. Shalewa was able to get close to King Adewale because Chief Owolabi still pretended to be a friend of the royal family, and he took his children with him most times to the palace. But that was all, as King Adewale never saw Shalewa beyond just an ordinary friend, despite how often she tried to get him to notice her advances. Now, Ogunjimi is Chief Owolabi's late older sister's son, who had moved to Boku to live with his uncle after his own father's village was attacked by some unknown foreign invaders. So, most of the times, whenever Shalewa and her brother goes to visit the palace, Ogunjimi would also go along with them, and soon he became friends with King Adewale also. Ogunjimi and King Adewale's friendship grew into a close one, and they became best friends as the year progressed. Now, since King Adewale is now an adult, and because of the position he held, the elders and chiefs in council started urging him to take a wife as their custom demanded. Kabiyesi o, you were a child when you became king, and that was why we did not bring up this matter. But now, you are a grown man, so you must take a wife now, as it is important to strengthen your rule on the throne. This is our custom, the chiefs and elders told King Adewale. And so, as per their duty and with Chief Owolabi's influence, they suggested that the king marries Shalewa because she had been a friend of the royal household. But King Adewale openly and outrightly told them that he was not interested in Shalewa. The weeks that followed, the elders brought some other beautiful maidens to the king to make a choice of a wife, but King Adewale liked none of the maidens. This went on for weeks, and by the 3rd month, 31 beautiful, eligible maidens from Boku were presented to King Adewale, but none of them caught his attention. The elders and all of Boku began to wonder if the king was man enough and if his manhood was functioning. How can a man not be attracted to even one amongst all those exceptionally beautiful maidens presented to him? They said. Kabiyesi, is there a maiden we do not know of? Tell us, and we shall go to our parents and make arrangements for the marriage. All we want is for you to get married, the elders said. Well, King Adewale wished he could tell them what his heart really felt, but he could not, as what he feels was forbidden and a taboo. Not only did King Adewale not find the maidens brought to him attractive, he actually does not and had never found women attractive. Rather, he always feels attracted to men. Before Ogunjimi came, he had found a two or few of the palace guards and warriors attractive, especially those who were broad-chested, muscular, and were well built. And when Ogunjimi came, he fell in love with Ogunjimi because Ogunjimi was also a very tall and good-looking young man. But he knew that what he feels is a taboo, as having a romantic relationship or feelings for his fellow man is a sin against the land and the gods. So he suppressed it, even though it became difficult for him every day as his friendship with Ogunjimi grew over time. Now, Ogunjimi also cares so much about King Adewale. He also began to realize that as he and the king grew closer, he lost interest in any other woman and was also developing feelings for the king. Whenever they were together, the king always seemed as though he was a maiden to him. Like King Adewale, Ogunjimi also knew that having a romantic feeling towards someone of the same gender is unacceptable, so he also always suppressed what he felt. Every time, whenever they meet, they would be silent for a long time, looking into each other's eyes, each of them suppressing the inner desire that burns deep within them. One day, King Adewale called his mother and asked to share his secrets with her. Over the years, King Adewale had learned to confide in his mother about matters that bothers him, but he had been so ashamed and embarrassed to tell her how he felt about Ogunjimi, but he could no longer keep it to himself on that evening. "Mother, I don't know what is wrong with me. I am not attracted to any woman, but only men, and now I have a strong feeling for Ogunjimi," King Adewale said. Queen Mojisola began to cry and panicked immediately she heard what her son just said to her. King Adewale felt bad for making his mother cry, so he began to beg her to stop crying and promised her that he was going to let go of what he felt and would take a wife. Very early at dawn the next morning, Queen Mojisola was seen secretly talking to an old woman by a quiet and lonely bush path. The old woman gave her something wrapped in a leaf. Queen Mojisola thanked the old woman and both of them were about to go their separate ways when Chief Owolabi came out from the bush he has been hiding and intercepted them. Chief Owolabi was traveling to the next village to inspect a new land he had just acquired when he saw the queen and the old woman whispering something. So he got suspicious, as it was such an odd hour of the day to see the queen out secretly with another woman. So he hid in the bush to eavesdrop on their conversation, and that was how he heard everything they spoke about. Having been caught, Queen Mojisola begged Chief Owolabi to keep her secrets, but he would not. It was a valuable secret to him, so he went back into the village and called for a meeting of the elders, kingmakers, and the chief priest. That morning, King Adewale was confused when he saw the gathering of the elders and the chief priest because he had not called for a meeting. "My elders, hope all is well. Who called for this emergency meeting and why?" he asked. "Shut up, you deceitful being," Chief Owolabi said, making King Adewale more confused. Queen Mojisola was dragged out to stand before the elders as Chief Owolabi revealed the secrets he heard Queen Mojisola and the old woman talked about. The secrets which Queen Mojisola had kept to herself and has been hiding all these years. Queen Mojisola did not conceive until the 9th year of her marriage. During the time they prayed to the gods to bless them with a child, the chief priest visited the palace one day and told the king that he would be blessed with an heir soon who would be great and carry on his reign and legacy. The chief priest also mentioned that the king is destined to have only one heir, and this made Queen Mojisola happy when she became pregnant eventually, as she was convinced that she would bear a son. However, when Queen Mojisola bore a child, it was a baby girl and not a son. Queen Mojisola, remembering the prophecy, got sad that probably the gods did not destine her to be the one who would bear the heir for the king. She also feared that her husband would marry another woman in order to get the prophesied heir. So, in her desperation, she decided that she was going to turn the hands of the prophecy to favor her. She planned with the royal midwife, who happened to be her late mother's best friend. Together, they lied to the king and all of Boku village that Queen Mojisola gave birth to a baby boy. She planned to keep it that way until she was able to tell her husband and convince him to go with the lie. But unfortunately, the king died early whilst his child was still young and never got to know the truth. Queen Mojisola also lied to her child and made her believe she was a boy. Queen Mojisola bathed her child herself right from when he was little. She prevented her child from associating with other children until the time he was crowned king. And when her child started growing older, she made her bathe in a very dark room. The king of Boku's bath is sacred and not ordinary. It is spiritual and must be done in a dark room. You will only dip yourself in the bath bowl and come out. That is how it is done for the king, Queen Mojisola said to her child. All of these were lies, and there was no such thing as spiritual bath for the king. But Queen Mojisola did this so that her child would not get an idea of how she truly looks without clothes on, and especially about her sexual organ. Also, as her child grew, Queen Mojisola secretly began adding 2 different tasteless herbs to her child's meal. One of the herbs was able to make her voice sound husky, whilst the other slowed the development of her breast. These uncommon herbs Queen Mojisola was able to get through the help of the midwife. Since the former king died early, there was no male to guide King Adewale about such trivial issues as regards her sexual organs and sexuality, and so she followed all her mother's instructions without getting to know the difference between a male and a female organ. However, it was evident that despite all Queen Mojisola did to make her daughter seem like a man, she could not change nature, as King Adewale's attraction for men, especially well-built muscular men, is because she is truly and originally a girl. Queen Mojisola realized this the previous night when King Adewale opened up to her about her feelings for men and Ogunjimi, and so Queen Mojisola had gone to meet the midwife to find a possible solution to suppress the feelings for the king. And that was when Chief Owolabi caught them in the bush paths. After the whole revelation, King Adewale stared at her mother in disbelief. She could not believe she was made to believe that she was male when in the real sense she was female. The elders too were also in disbelief. It now made sense to them why King Adewale looked so petite as her mother and why she never grew any beard. The elders were angry at Queen Mojisola for tricking them, and so they decided that she was going to be banished alongside her child when the chief priest spoke and intervened. The chief priest told them that truly the gods revealed that the king would be blessed with an heir, but never did they say that it must have to be a male, and that is why the gods allowed Queen Mojisola to succeed in her trick, because while she thought she turned the prophecy to favor her, she was only a tool to fulfill the prophecy and to prove that good leadership and capacity is not determined by one's gender alone. At last, the elders agreed with this, seeing how well King Adewale ruled and how the gods blessed her reign. King Adewale accepted her real identity as female later on. Queen Mojisola begged her daughter and the people of Boku land to forgive her for lying to them all these years. King Adewale's name was changed from Adewale to Adewumi. King Adewumi and Ogunjimi got married months later. And as a way to honor her husband, she transferred her authority as king to Ogunjimi after their marriage, and she became known as Queen Adewumi. She ruled besides her husband, King Ogunjimi, and the kingdom of Boku continued to prosper as it was from the beginning. The end. I hope you enjoyed the story and have learned a thing or two from it. I would love to know. Please leave a comment. Thank you for watching and see you in our next video. Bye.